Good morning, everyone. Actually, just afternoon. I'm going to be doing Dharma today. All of the monastics are, most of them are at a retreat, receiving an initiation related to something called Poma. And Soma is in a retreat as a teacher up at Southern Dharma this whole weekend. So it's just nice. We'll start off with incense burning, and we'll sing that aloud. Incense burning, all space is filled with the fragrance, all the smells of fire, all auspicious clouds gather everywhere. With endless sincerity, all is of you. We pay homage and offer clouds of incense to the Bodhisattvas and the Mahasattvas. We pay homage and offer clouds of incense to the Bodhisattvas and the Mahasattvas. We pay homage and offer clouds of incense to the Bodhisattvas and the Mahasattvas. Thank you. Well, I usually this opportunity for me it's a bit about me. It's usually something I got interested in or wanted to learn, and so I ran into this month's Lion's Roar. And anytime there's, the theme is death, that's one of the things that as Buddhists we try to penetrate as a concept and a reality, right? To prepare ourselves for that inevitability. And so it turns out there's an article in here by a teacher named Judy Leaf. It's called The Tibetan Book of Dead. It isn't just about dying. And as I got into it, it wasn't hard to see that the Tibetan Book of the Dead describes kind of that experience of death and what we'll go through and how it leads to potentially to rebirth. But it also talks about how there are opportunities for liberation right there in that process. So what came to me strongly from just my reading of that article was, the practice we do of the Dharma that we practice here at Heartwood is an essential setup for what will happen according to the description of what happens in the Bardos in this Tibetan Book of the Dead. And it's intended, on the one hand, to be read aloud to people when they die. And that's so that as they're embarking on this process, they're hearing. And maybe that hearing is helping them to sort of manage the experience that they're having. My thought is, well, that may help some. We would do best to dedicate ourselves to Buddhist practice in this life, to be as ready as we can for that experience that the book describes, right? We don't want to, that way for us, it'll be just a reminder. So now we'll be there, we'll be in the death process, and we'll be hearing, and it'll be a reminder for us. That's a much stronger position to be in, right? If you're in a game and your coach says something to you that you practiced 1,000,000 times, but he can tell you forgot right now, then boom, right away you can use it because you have it, you've practiced it, you know it. And that's what strikes me is we can read this book to people when they die, and that's very compassionate to do. But as practitioners, we should make sure that our Buddhist practice is sound and we're capable of doing some of the things that are required here. And that's what this talk is going to be about. Handling ourselves in this state with a lot of unknowns. So just some background here. The word Bardo is Tibetan and means intermediate or in-between state. Now, right away, our Buddhist practices, when you think about mindfulness, meditation, our cultivation practices, help us to be okay with impermanence and uncertainty, right? Those are big teachings that we spend our whole lives trying to, we go into the intensive laboratory of meditation to get an intensive experience of what happens when our mind throws things up and how do we handle it. And then just watching the arising and falling away of experiences and thoughts. But we get to be sort of maybe good at it after a while. Even while we're walking around, we learn to be mindful and maybe give time rather than just react to every thought or feeling or situation that arises. We learn to be less impulsive, really. And that'll be very helpful in the Bardo. But to me, it seems, from the description of the Bardo, and we'll get into it, it would be really helpful if a lot of that stuff was second nature. You know how you can learn something so well that you have it? I play tennis, and so there are certain things I do on the tennis court that are just there. I don't have to think about them anymore. When I had to think about them, I couldn't hear anything new from the coach because I was still focused on my swing. But once you don't have to worry about the swing anymore, you can take new instruction.
Natural by
I lost.
Yeah.
I lost you. Took some more.
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
And we're right with you.
Thank you. Yeah, so we want it to be second nature, not necessarily something we think we can do when the time comes, right? And as we kind of get into this a little bit, you're going to see that you're really going to want to know what you're doing to the extent possible. So the book describes, the Tibetan Book of the Dead describes 6 bardos or intermediate states. In this life, the obvious ones are in this life between birth and death, where this is an intermediate state that we're in. The bardo of dreams between sleep and waking. The bardo of meditation between enlightenment and ego, or sanity and madness. Anytime we're between one thing and another, moment to moment in our lives, in limbo, bored, nothing to do, not grounded, can we learn to simply be with what is, rather than constantly craving experience, almost kind of just for experience sake, filling the void that might be, a feeling of groundlessness or uncertainty. So now we get to after death. So the first 3 bardos are kind of they're just in this life, but the majority of the text and the majority of the teaching focuses on the bardos after death. And the first is the bardo of death, where The immediate experience is the shock of impermanence. We literally see our true nature, our primordial awareness. We face the truth of impermanence in its most raw form. As the body dissolves, the mind becomes unmoored. The instruction is to maintain mindfulness of experiences as they arise and dissolve. Pay attention, concentrate, don't react, recognize and rest. Sound familiar? Ooh. A lot of those practices, right, in our Buddhist teachings in this life, to me, I'm hearing a motivation to take it to the next level, to get going, because whatever we can do in this life is going to be useful after. So this recognize and rest may not be so easy if we don't recognize what we're seeing, the true nature of our own mind, or the ability to concentrate and stay with it. You're instructed to be open to curiosity, maintain awareness, kindness, compassion. So we should cultivate this mind while we're living. The 4 Brahma Viharas, the 6 perfections, meditation will all be of great service. But unfortunately for most, confusion sets in. We don't know if we're coming or going, bewilderment, grasping, clinging for experience, groundedness. This is why I said we all have an opportunity for liberation at death, but few of us choose it, or even could choose it. We're simply unprepared. And the teachings on the Bardo are designed to help us prepare. Remaining open in this Bardo brings a potential for awakening. It's literally a gateway to liberation. So it's interesting that at death, we actually see our true nature. If we practice seeing it in our life, then we'll be more comfortable with it and be able to rest in it when we experience it in the Bardo. If not, the ungroundedness of it will feel foreign, and we'll look for alternatives that are more comfortable.
Grasp.
In our present state, in this life, sitting here right now, we don't see our true nature. It's kind of interesting, you know. All of our Buddhist practice is about getting to see our true nature. In death, we'll see it right away, and it's likely to be extremely overwhelming, and will cause us to most likely look for another experience. Meanwhile, if we're Buddhist practitioners in this life, we'll be getting exactly what we asked for, but will our practice hold us? So in this life, sitting here right now, we don't see our true nature, but in death we can. Sounds like an advantage until we realize that our attachments and fears will rise up and we'll cling to something, some type of solidity. It reminds me of a psychedelic trip I took when I was young. It was a very similar experience to this. I had used mushrooms. My buddy and I got a little bag of mushrooms, and we had been using them on Sunday, just a little bit each Sunday. And really, those early experiences, and all of those experiences until the very end of the bag, were laughing and just this sort of, joy, and just sort of, laughing at just, unbelievable things. No big wild trip or anything like that, just an influence that kind of, made us really kind of, laugh and goof and, all that kind of stuff. Well, we got to the end of the bag, and this particular Sunday, all we had was crumbs, the sticks, the crumbs, just a little bit. So we each had a little bit. Well, it must have built up in my system enough so that now I was having a trip. And we were, in those days, we did a lot in the car. We were always in the car. you know, he would sort of cough. And so of course, you know, eventually I landed at home and walking in the den, the entrance to my parents' home, were my father and my mother sitting there watching television as expected. So I skulk my way into the house and go in. And I realize when I get into my room, I feel like I want to go to bed. And I'm kind of wanting this to be over. But I get into bed and I don't dare turn the light off. And it's just, I don't dare close my eyes. I want to go to sleep, but I don't dare close my eyes. And so I'm literally hanging onto the edges of the bed because I'm in this state where I feel like I'm completely vulnerable to all that is. And I don't know what to expect. Sounds a lot like what we're reading here, right? And so, you know, and then once in a while I had to get up and go to the bathroom. And when I went to the bathroom, I wouldn't dare look in the mirror. I would not dare look in the mirror. Get my eyes down, get back in the bed, held on, and
We do that in life.
it waited for this to be over. And I think around 3 or 4 in the morning, it was, I probably did go to sleep. I had to go to work the next day. It was, you know, I worked in a grocery store. It was that time of life, but
You were afraid? You're afraid to look in the mirror?
yeah,
Can you articulate what you were afraid of?
seeing something that would freak me out. Maybe even seeing me in a way that, you know, I didn't expect. You know, we're probably all pretty familiar even with the other, it's not a psychedelic drug, we don't consider it to be, but marijuana gives you, the reason we get paranoid is because we see ourselves a little more maybe clearly than we would otherwise. And we start to sort of see what we think other people are seeing, and that generates a whole thing. Well, this was on steroids. This was way beyond all of that. Like literally, I was in touch with the universe, but didn't know how to handle it and wanted it to stop and didn't want to participate whatsoever. I was not looking for an experience. I was looking for this experience to end fast.
Were you having physical anxiety, like your heart racing, your face red?
No.
No.
But what you're saying is that that experience was so uncommon. And that's gonna be like the moment of death when we see our true nature, if we're not able to deal with it then.
That's right. Yeah.
And I think what I am saying is that the mystic, you know, swims in the same water that the mad person, the ordinary mind,
Yeah.
drowns in.
So what was I doing? I'm hanging on and I'm seeking safety. I'm seeking something I know, something that makes me feel grounded, right? And so this is how they describe the experience. And this is why we need to practice in our meditation, in our cultivation. We need to practice in our lives so that we're better able to handle this when it comes up, to take advantage of the opportunity that's here. And maybe not, and also not make a rash, you know, impulsive sort of decision to go in a certain direction that, you know, is going to lead to a rebirth that, you know, might regret. It's hard to imagine the state of mind you'll be in. You know, we talk about we and we talk about us and what we like. Is my bike going to come with me, or all those things? I think it's a different state of mind. Go ahead, Rob.
I mean, honestly, I think it's powerful, Joe. What's rising for me is like the computer screen's glitching. And it's like, and you start slamming the keys to try to do something, and that just kind of causes further glitching versus having the steadiness, the calmness, the poise, the presence, the access to deeper levels of knowing where you can hit Control Alt Delete, hit F7. You know, it's something like that.
Yeah. So we can cultivate glimpses of this luminous nature of mind through our meditation practice and through Buddhist teachings that point it out. And that second part, Buddhist teachings that point it out. When we are reviewing Buddha Master's discourses, and particularly expounding, he goes to great length to point out the experience. many experiences, but he's been talking about the Bardo lately in our reading, actually, in our study. And so he's doing his best with language prajna to give us a sense for what's to come, for what to prepare for, and then teachings on how to do so in this life with the way he teaches his cultivation and meditation and that sort of thing. So you can see how, as I'm reading this, article, and some of these things are being pointed out, this entire Dharma practice is coming right to the fore as, oh wow, time to get serious again, because it's not just about, I want to get something cool in this life. If we really, really, really are committed to becoming liberated, possibly in this life, and we don't quite get there, there is one more chance. And so all the more reason to stay with our practice. So there's plenty of benefits that I've seen of Buddhist practice for this life that I'm walking around having right now. And so there's plenty of incentive there. What we're going to see later, Buddha Master will encourage us to, the way he encourages. There's a knack for encouraging in such a way that we can't avoid the message, but encourage us to step it up. And it occurred to me too, could this Bardo be what near-death experiences describe? Because it's the first thing. It's the first Bardo. It's our first experience. Near-death experiences, when people come back from those experiences, they often talk about this expansive state, this peaceful, this connectedness, this unified sort of, experience that they're having. So I wonder if that first Bardo is what they're actually sort of experiencing. And so if we don't achieve liberation in the first Bardo, then we have the Bardo of Dharmata. It means suchness. So the first Bardo was fairly peaceful. And if we could kind of handle it, relatively. Now we move into more of an overwhelming display of our mind's projections, ungrounded by the physical body. Bypasses conceptual mind, direct emotional penetration. That's the way it's described. That kind of makes me think of the common story we hear of our life flashing before our eyes. This experience of this rapid fire, everything that's ever happened, there it is. And unbounded by the conceptual mind, which would filter and make sense out of it all and throw a bunch of it over here because, it doesn't feel good when but no conceptual mind, just direct experience of.
You're also saying there's
Or it's like a whole mind.
an emotional penetration there?
That's what it says. Bypasses the conceptual mind, so it's like a direct emotional penetration. There's a description, there's a second description here that I got from the internet, from rywiki.sadra.org. It says, the Bardo of Dharmata is when the appearances of this lifetime have subsided. There is no physical body and no conditioned experience. Everything perceived is pure phenomena. The sounds, colors, and lights of the Dharmata are in our basic nature. The person who has not gained stability in this state will again fall prey to ignorance and habitual tendencies, dualistic experience reoccurs, and the Bardo of becoming begins. That's the third Bardo.
Sounds like the confusion of the chattering mind that drives you to meditate. Right? I know personally, sometimes I get to the point where like, I need to come to the Buddhist temple. I need to meditate. I need to find that peaceful center again, you know? And so there's an ebb and flow of that kind of state in our lives.
Yeah.
But this would be the ultimate of it.
Yeah, and this is like, this is on steroids. It sounds, and sounds, colors, lights, and it all, you know, appears perfectly real. There is even peaceful and wrathful deities. Now, in this Bardo, we're going to see a lot and experience a lot. But the teaching is that it's all projections of our own mind. If we can recognize this, we can be liberated on the spot. So you have Venerable talks once in a while, because Buddha Master talks once in a while, that the experiences we have in meditation, that's just your mind, that's your mind. But having those experiences and you know, and recognizing that, or at least, you know, correlating that, you know, that's your mind, and somehow trying to make sense of that, will work towards what will happen in this experience here. So, this coming up will struck me as somewhat compassionate. So, peaceful and wrathful deities. So not only colors, lights, all kinds of, you know, kind of phenomena and experience, just our mind, just untethered. Nothing to ground it. Peaceful and wrathful deities in their corresponding facets of wisdom will appear, one at a time. Each representing a facet of wisdom. And the names of the facets of wisdom are all-encompassing space, mirror-like wisdom, equanimity, discriminating awareness, all accomplishing action. We talk about some of these things, and you know, Buddha Master talks about these things. He tries to make us understand some of these things: discriminating awareness, equanimity. And then there is also, so you have the natural deities, they're associated with these facets of wisdom. And then there's confusion, or the kleshas, negative emotions, corresponding to the 6 realms of samsara: passion, aggression, ignorance, pride, greed, envy. When any one of the deities appears, both wisdom and confusion appear together. And we must choose one or the other. Do we go for wisdom, which is probably going to represent a big unknown? Or do we stay with what we know and kind of go choose confusion? But in this life, as we practice Dharma, don't we walk around with a sense of our own wisdom, and when we're confused? So in this life, on the Dharma path, we're constantly faced with the choice between wisdom and confusion. That's called cultivation. We're walking around doing that all the time, hopefully. And as we get a better sense for what wisdom is, it shows more clearly when we're confused. We can feel it. It's like hits us. It's a bodily experience when we're confused because we know it's alternative. We know the other. And we can learn to know and choose the difference. So, in this Bardo, it's an intensive experience of that, but the practice that we get in this life on the Dharma path is invaluable, will go invaluable towards that experience. This serves us well in the Bardo. However, if we continue to favor confusion in this life, then we won't have built the muscles we need to overcome it in the Bardo. Right? So everything, practice off the field, that's it, so to speak, building the muscles, practice on the pillow, practice, before things are really, we practice managing our mind and being mindful and being less impulsive. And we do all those things in order so that when a situation arises, when it's really gonna draw on that we take a pause and we can handle ourselves better, right? We learn to do that. Same in psychology, we learn all the same things in psychology. Yeah.
It sounds a little challenging because in the final, like in life, doing it, okay, you didn't choose the wisest path, and maybe 5 years from now, 20 years from now, you'll have grown enough that you're able to choose the wise path. But in death, you make that wrong choice, confusion reigns for eternity.
Yeah.
That's kind of challenging. It's like,
Well, I mean, at least, yeah, so for another rebirth at least.
Yeah, can you speak to that a little more? Because it's almost, sometimes I think of people born a bad seed, like they did the wrong things, they made the wrong choices in the last life or whatever. Like it's not like they've nurtured their way to become so evil. They somehow,
Yeah.
I don't know if you can think of anybody that you've known who said this person had to be born this way.
Oh, plenty. Even musicians and things like that. I mean, these prodigies that arise, 6 years old, they're playing, Bach sonatas and all those things. I mean, but in our discussions, we associate that with karma. We're all carrying a karmic load, and we bring that with us into each life at any time. A particular situation or can activate a seed of karma and bring about the experience of that. So we're coming in with different karma. And different karma is ripening at different times for different people. And,
so what I'm getting from this talk is that on the brink of death, and even after death, the first moment after death, you're faced with these choices.
yeah.
Can I say something?
Yeah. And one thing I'll point out is that it is true that, or they do say that, the Bardo experience covers several days of our time, almost several days. So it's not like this is all happening in an instant. You can get it, boom. There can be several days of this experience. Go ahead, Ron.
I think the choice for me in this picture the dissolving of the body, everything that you've known, all the ingrained habituation in every single cell. I'm not sure we can't view this as it's a me that's choosing where I go next. It's more like, what potentialities do we have access to based on the causes and conditions that we have planted through our cultivation and meditation? Because when that thing is coming apart at the seams, it's going to be disorienting. And the amount of what I hear really permeating through those teachings again and again is that when this is happening, there has to be an inherent stability that has been that rises spontaneously and naturally through habituation because the seed for that was planted in our lives. And this is different than just I'm making a choice.
That's consciousness.
I don't know, it's coming, what consciousness is a tough word for me because it takes up so many things. But I think it's
Familiarity is a good word.
right. It's
Yeah.
like the stability. First, you have to know, hey, I'm here. It said sometimes people die and they're so befuddled that they don't realize they're dead.
Mhm.
That's why that movie, The Sixth Sense, was so powerful for us, right? Like, because the kid, this little dude walking around for all this time, he doesn't even realize he's dead.
Yeah, that's how we died too.
Right. And
I think muscle memory has a lot to do with it, because Joe mentioned tennis, and I play piano, and I used to play basketball and tennis. And when you're, or think of karate, right? If you're in a position where the guy's suddenly going to hit you here, you instinctively know to use a certain swipe to knock his hand out of the way. And that's a lot of training, over and over the same muscle memory.
That's just what you were talking about.
Yeah, and you trained before that was ever needed, but when it was needed, it was there. Yeah, exactly the same thing. So the peaceful deities come first, and then the wrathful. The wrathful are coming at you for real. But the interesting thing is that both the peaceful deities and the wrathful deities are trying to wake us up using different approaches. What does it take to wake this one up? What does it take? I can see the compassion. So if this is our own mind, then the compassion built into our own inherent nature, it seems it'll stop at nothing to wake us up. Because this is all our own mind that we're experiencing. But ultimately, we must be resolute in choosing wisdom in these experiences and throughout the Bardo experiences. So I can see how this ties back to the Dharma of cultivation and the teaching that Buddha Master gave. In cultivating a mind that fears impermanence, has a firm belief in the sufferings of reincarnation caused by impermanence, and renunciation, which is the true desire to leave the cycle of reincarnation. Those are the first 3 of the 8 right views that he says a cultivator must have, in that order. In that, even further than that, we must understand impermanence so well that we fear it. Now, if we had arrived at that level of cultivation, then we would be hell-bent in the Bardo to choose wisdom, wouldn't we? Because we already know, we've already, right? We've gone a long way towards understanding what's the right thing to choose, and we'll be informed. So, according to the Buddha Master in the Dharma of Cultivation, which is this little blue book, I think we have probably some copies out there for anyone who would like to investigate. Impermanence is the first of the 8 fundamental right views of a cultivator on the Bodhisattva path. All the fruits resulting from a mind of impermanence are causes of cultivation. So he tends to talk a lot in terms of cause and effect. So he's saying the effect resulting from having developed a mind that has penetrated impermanence and fears it will cultivate themselves in this life. The reason many of us are wishy-washy is because we haven't we're not convinced, right? That's how it is with everything in this life.
You said and fears it?
What's that?
Or you just read and fears it?
I added that, but you're gonna hear from him in a minute. And yes, and fears it, and fears it. So, and fears it, and, you know, part of the thing that you're experiencing in the Bardo is this, you know, if we don't get liberated in the Bardo, well, if we haven't gotten liberated in this life, so that's the first reason we're cultivating ourselves, right? And then we have another chance in the Bardo. If we don't get liberated in the Bardo, it's rebirth. And then karma takes over, and we could have hundreds, thousands of rebirths before we ever get a chance to encounter the Dharma again. We could get a rebirth into a realm where in Earth years, it could be trillions of years before we ever even get a chance for another rebirth. So also in the Dharma cultivation, Buddha Master states, cultivation, the reason we cultivate is to leave the cycle of reincarnation. That's why we practice Buddhism. That's why we cultivate ourselves. That's what we're doing. He's not messing around. He's like, if you're dealing with me, here's what we're doing, right? This is what we're doing. I mean, maybe you're just ending suffering for yourself. Maybe you're just, you know, that's fine. That's a step along the way. What I'm teaching is ending the cycle of rebirth.
I have a question, Jim. You know, like, if you read stories about the fourth watch of the night, when the Buddha received his illumination, it is said that right before that happened, the armies of Mara were like in there, and what I understood is like full frontal assault, and they basically were questioning his validity to be an overcomer, you know. And they asked him, like, who are you, you know, and his response was to touch the earth. But hearing this through the lens of what you're offering with the Bardo, I wonder, like, was all that machinations of the Buddha's mind? Like, I don't know the answer to that question, but I think, like, because it'd be pretty easy to in that moment to get caught in fear and habituation,
Yeah.
and then be reacting against that.
Absolutely, yeah.
So
It happens to us all the time, right? Feeling good about the Dharma, kind of tracking, and all of a sudden somebody will say something and be like, oh yeah, I guess it's pretty stupid. That's why we have to be careful who we talk to about what we're doing.
For sure.
And you know, somebody told a story the other day about how someone asked, I think their sibling asked, you know, where are they going on a particular weekend to have a retreat, and what are they going to be doing? And she told them what it was about. And as soon as she was saying it, she realized not only is this going to fall on deaf ears, but it's going to create consternation. It's going to create, you know, and for my mind, it can also create doubt in me. Because as I'm hearing myself say it, and realizing that there's almost a too fantastic sounding about it, it's creating doubt in me, right? At least on a subtle level. And it's like, and then you're anticipating the questions that are going to come, and they're your own questions. You see, this is all our own mind, right? So yeah, this is why, you know, when we sit here and we have our Dharma study in that room, we're safe. We talk about all the things we talk about. We never think twice. But you take any of that aspect of that conversation outside to someone you just run into at the gym, you will hear absolute gibberish and nonsense coming out of your mouth. Because you know it won't make any sense to them. And you know, you start to automatically think what they're thinking of that. And it starts to create doubts in your own mind, because now you're hearing those things. Whether they say them or not, you're hearing them because you're anticipating them. Because you know how you've judged people who've come across with things that sounded, crazy too, right?
Yep.
That's where faith and Sangha come in.
Yeah.
It's not just the doubts in your mind, it's also the drain on you too, like you're wasting your time.
Mhm.
You got only so much in a lifetime
Mhm.
to give.
That's a tough one there.
Yeah.
Okay. So cultivation is to leave the cycle of reincarnation. I'm going to read about a page and a half here. This is from the Dharma of cultivation. We want to cultivate a mind that's determined to leave the cycle of reincarnation. Thus, if you want to have this true state of mind that is determined to leave the cycle of reincarnation, you know what I'm going to suggest, in keeping with this teaching on the Bardos, listen with your eyes closed. And as you're hearing, try to just hear it and not let your mind react to what you're hearing or conceptualize. Just try to be with the experience of what you're hearing. Part of the reason I say that is because the first time I read this, I had reincarnation on the shelf. And he was stressing over and over. I read this book. I ran into nothing but the word reincarnation over and over and over, and how it was key to making any progress whatsoever. So over the next several months, I pull reincarnation off the shelf. But that's what I mean. But like the experience in the Bardo, where we want to be present, pay attention is the theme. They say, reading through the teaching of the Tibetan Book of the Dead is pay attention. Pay attention. Stay focused. Don't lose. Don't get lost. Don't wander. So see if we can listen with that attitude here. And part of the reason I say it is because some of the things, depending on your background, and might hit you a certain way. Well, imagine one of those wrathful deities hitting you a certain way. How would you react? So let's just see if we can practice listening without
Emptying the vessel.
differentiating. Yeah, differentiating is a word we use a lot. Okay. Thus, if you want to have this true state of mind that is determined to leave the cycle of reincarnation, you must first understand impermanence. The second step is to have a mind of firm belief. You must firmly believe in the sufferings of reincarnation, which has as its source impermanence. Only with such a mind of firm belief will you fear the sufferings caused by impermanence, and successfully attain a state of mind that truly fears impermanence. Having attained a state of mind that truly fears impermanence, your state of mind that is determined to leave the cycle of reincarnation will grow stronger day by day. Naturally, your state of mind that is determined to leave the cycle of reincarnation will enter a real state that truly fears impermanence. If living beings do not understand that all conditional dharmas in the universe are impermanent, if they do not understand the sufferings connected with reincarnation and impermanence, then they cannot establish a firm mind that gives rise to thoughts of leaving the cycle of reincarnation. If you have never thought about leaving the cycle of reincarnation, you will not cultivate at all. You will not want to learn Buddhism. Those who do not learn Buddhism have no desire to leave the cycle of reincarnation. How could one who does not learn Buddhism have a mind determined to leave the cycle of reincarnation? Thus, you cannot first cultivate a mind determined to leave the cycle of reincarnation. As the first step, you will not enter Buddhism without having a mind of impermanence, truly giving rise to feelings of fear of impermanence, and truly giving rise to a state that fears impermanence. Even if you become a Buddhist, you will not be able to attain a deep level of correct cultivation.
I still wonder about the word fear. Understanding impermanence would make sense to me, but fearing impermanence. I don't know if you could speak to that a little more.
You know, as we're kind of learning about the Bardos here, and if you were able to sort of, I mean, make anything out of that psychedelic experience I described, this is a very fearful situation. And it's fearful enough in and of itself. But then to realize that this is only one of potentially thousands or millions of trillions of times that we'll go through this. Like every life that we have results in an ending, and then this sort of, you know, rebirth saga plays out. And so there's a great deal of suffering in being reborn in samsara. And I think part of the trick is samsara. It's samsara. It's a world where there is suffering, where there's karma, where we're self-identified. And we know what the suffering of being self-identified in this life feels like. In the beginning, when I was exposed to Buddhism, I didn't believe I suffered. I figured I had a pretty good life. My family life was good growing up. By this time, I had, you know, had a career, a family, a home, retirement savings, and, you know, nothing to complain about. That's what we were told growing up anyways, you know. What are you complaining about? I'll give you something to complain about. Right, so when I encountered Buddhism here at Heartwood back in probably 2018 timeframe, well, all this talk about suffering, I come to Dharma talks, all this talk about suffering, I'm like, wait, I don't suffer. But as I started talking about this practice or another, I decided to kind of pick it up. And well, that's easy, it can't hurt, you know, pick it up. Mindfulness, you know. And I started to realize, wait, I do suffer. What about that anxiety I feel right now before this meeting at work? Why? Why did I worry about it all day? Why did it keep me up last night? What is this? Right? And it's got to do with this needing to sort of this identity that they say is false, that we find ourselves spending an entire lifetime promoting, defending, protecting. And it's the reason why there's so much conflict in this world, because we're all just doing that. And we're trying to read each other's minds because we want to know when there's a threat to that, how we're perceived, that all ties back to that identity or an attachment to that identity. Buddha Master calls it self-attachment. So there's a great deal of suffering in this life, and then to go through this trillions and trillions of times and to build up karma along the way, and not to know what karma is going to fruit at any given time in any given life. If we kind of understand that, and we give it a chance, and we give the practices a chance to let us know what freedom looks like, because I've experienced much more of what freedom looks like now than I had before I ever took up Buddhism. And it feels good. And it's an encouragement and an incentive to keep going. So that's the world according to Joe. But
I appreciate it. You've given a good overview where fear does take part in it.
mm,
Thank you.
you're welcome. So best to, you know, embrace impermanence in every way we can in this life before we're faced with it in the Bardo. And, you know, the Buddhist practices, teachings on mindfulness have us recognizing that when we're caught up or stuck or we won't move because we don't know what to do, or we're worried about taking a step because of how it'll look, or all those things, that these experiences come and go and come and go, and how much of someone else's mind state will we destroy in order to protect our own. And we try to get in touch with the idea that things come and go in this life and nothing's permanent, and take a chill and not make such a big deal out of things. And that's great practice towards the Bardo. Now, if we make it through those Bardos and we are not successful in achieving liberation, then the Bardo of becoming. Overwhelming energy and groundless experience of the previous Bardos cause a desperate striving for solidity, and we take birth. And, our state, how we react to adversity in this life, how we react to being challenged in this life, how we react to criticism in this life, how we react when we're scared, that's all gonna play out in the Bardo. And it's gonna dictate where in samsara we end up. Whether in a hell realm, a hungry ghost realm, a God realm. Think about the God realms as you're there a long time. And you don't know any different, you're just there a long time. The thing about this life, and the reason it's considered so precious, is because we have, in hell, you're pretty bound up with suffering. It's hard to see past it. In the God realm, things are good. No need to change anything. No motivation. Here in this life, we get a balance of suffering, but because of the nature of impermanence, we get some suffering, but we get some good times. We get some suffering. We get some good times. Good times, and we can learn to choose and make choices and behave in ways that can create less suffering, not only for ourselves but for others, and create more freedom, relaxation, peace, whatever it is. That's on the positive side of the experience here, but all of it's impermanent. No matter how good we get at being happy, we go into the Bardo, and depending on how we react to whatever happens in there, we could end up in a hell realm. No matter how happy we were right here, we could still end up somewhere that. Now, it's not going to be us. Joe's not going to end up in hell. That guy's going to be called something. That person, that thing, that whatever that is, it's going to be something. But it's not going to be me. So, just kind of to wrap us up, the Bardo teachings encourage us to get familiar and comfortable with the uncertainty we feel when we're between states, and as it'll be an important training for when we die. We have a tendency, and some of us have more or less tendency, to scramble to reestablish comfort, identity, and control when we are between times in this life. Like quickly replacing a spouse or a pet after one dies, right? To get back to that experience, to get once again grounded in what we think, this life is all about. Learning to manage these times with more wisdom while living will help us when we die. The Bardo teachings show us that challenges we face after death won't be very different from the ones we face in this life. So let's learn to face them with wisdom in this life. The better off we'll be as we transition. Our cultivation helps us to see our habitual patterns, and our wisdom, the better to recognize them in the Bardo. That's what cultivation is, right? we're on the Bodhisattva path, so we want to be a benefit. And as we're with that mindset, monitoring our behavior, we can see at times where impulsively saying out something, or we're trying to make a joke and we end up hurting someone's feelings, and all these different things. So we get in touch with our behavior and our habitual patterns, and we learn to correct those. And there's an actual transformation that occurs in your experience of Joe, for instance. Well, that transformation will carry forward. It's an actual transformation. Joe is different, right? So Joe goes into the Bardo with at least that much different. Wisdom's always an option. We can achieve liberation in the Bardo just as we can in this very life. Our choices and the cultivation of our mind will be the difference. Let the Dharma be your guide, in life as in death. Thank you all for your participation and for listening. Would someone like to offer merit? Close us out?
I'll do it.
Okay.
We dedicate whatever merit we've accumulated through this time together studying the Dharma to the benefit of all beings everywhere who face the same impermanence that we do. And may we all achieve wisdom and bliss.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Joe.